You're listening to The Practicing Law Librarian. This limited series is part of PLI's Ever Current podcast, where we bring you insights and updates from legal thought leaders. Find additional episodes at pli.edu or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi, I'm Karen Osterly. Welcome to the Practicing Law Librarian podcast, presented by PLI's Legal Information Services Group. This podcast brings you conversations with and for the law librarian community. As a practicing law librarian myself, I've been working in legal information services for 34 years, currently with PLI's Library Relations Group. Join us as we talk to Ellyssa Kroski. Ellyssa Valenti Kroski is the Director of Innovation and Engagement at the New York Law Institute, as well as an award-winning editor and author of 75 books, including Law Librarianship in the Age of AI, for which she won the AALL's 2020 Joseph L. Andrews Legal Literature Award. She is a librarian, an adjunct faculty member at San Jose State University, and an international conference speaker. Hear about her path from IT to law librarianship to blogging to homesteading in South Carolina. Ellyssa teaches, writes and edits countless books, designs escape rooms, produces LibGuides and numerous tutorials on key online tools, and travels the world to speak and present at conferences. To read her full bio, please see our podcast page. Thank you for joining us, Ellyssa.
Thank you for having me.
Do you want to just tell our audience briefly how we know each other?
Sure. Well, I had the pleasure of working with you for several years at the New York Law Institute.
That was fun. It's a very small group there at NILE, but I was there almost 7 years, and Ellyssa was there before me and remains there currently. So we had 7 years together. Can you talk a little bit about your work and your background and how you got to your current role of Director of Innovation and Engagement there?
Sure. Well, my background was in web consulting before going to library school, and that was really my entranceway into the library realm. I was doing a lot of information architecture, website design, and usability work. And I became very interested in the systematic organization of information, which spurred me to pursue a career in librarianship. I started out working as a solo library assistant at a technical college and then a part-time reference librarian at Columbia University, doing a combination of technical services, public services, instruction, and technology initiatives. And to make myself more marketable in the field, I started a blog called Infotangle. And I wrote about emerging technologies and concepts like folksonomies and user-based tagging, authority in the age of Web 2.0, and social networking. And I developed a workshop and some talks based on these emerging concepts. And I caught the eye of a publisher at Neil Schumett Publishing, who asked if I wanted to write a book, which turned into Web 2.0 for librarians and information professionals, which really set everything in motion. I started teaching in library school programs at my alma mater, Long Island University, as well as at Pratt Institute in New York City, and then at Drexel in Philadelphia. I started giving keynotes, workshops, and speaking engagements around the world, and I continued to write books, articles, and started editing book series and working with new authors on their books for Neil Schumett and then for the American Library Association and Rowman and Littlefield publishers as well. And I still do all of this remotely, along with my current position at the New York Law Institute, which is a membership library that serves law firms and their libraries with document delivery services, research services, and access to a slew of electronic resources, including a collection of 200,000 ebooks. So at NILE, I manage the technology and marketing efforts of the library. And I also teach information literacy and emerging technology courses at San Jose State University remotely. And I do all of this while living out in the countryside of South Carolina, where I started a homestead in order to pursue a more self-sustaining and slow-living lifestyle where I grow some of my own food and raise chickens and goats.
It was always one of the best parts of our weekly staff meeting to see the photos of there's something called an Easter chicken, and Ellyssa had some of these at one point. The eggs they lay are all different, pink and pale green and yellow and pale blue Easter egg type colors.
Yes.
And pictures of the goats we especially enjoyed. So speaking of Niley, what does Niley have for PLI resources? Because there's a long-standing relationship between the two nonprofits.
Yes. And actually, I'm told that we may have more PLI handbooks in our collection than PLI has. Niley has PLI course handbooks from the 1960s right up until last week. We have over 7,500 course handbooks like drug liability litigation from 1967, more current material such as PLI's California MCLE Marathon. And then some of this year's more recent interesting titles are Artificial Intelligence and Data-Driven Business Models 2023, Navigating Regulation Risks and Compliance Issues in Leveraging AI. Another interesting title is Cannabis, Legal and Business Fundamentals 2023 and Legal Project Management 2023. So those are some of the course titles. And then although we don't have PLI Plus right now at Niley, I do have to mention how generous PLI was during the height of COVID when they allowed us at Niley to have free access to PLI Plus so that practicing lawyers could get what they needed when we weren't on-site lending. But that I actually also need to follow that up by saying that we at Niley never closed during COVID. We were luckily in a position to work remotely already and had been testing out our disaster recovery scenarios already. So we were able to continue providing reference and electronic resources throughout the pandemic.
That was really something. Ellyssa was prescient. She'd gotten us all laptops and taught us how to use them from home. And I think we did the test run just within a month or so of 2020. We'd each stayed home for a day and worked from home to make sure it all worked. So it was really something. We did not have that many struggles, continuing on. And like she said, we never closed. Well, speaking of law librarianship, you come from a technological background. What is your interest in law librarianship and how did that develop?
Well, having had a chance to work in different types of libraries so far, including large academic libraries, a small school library, and now a private membership law library, I have to say that I very much enjoy law libraries because of the pace of adaptability and the size of staff. I've found that coming from a large academic environment, I prefer the nimbleness of a small organization. And also there are just so many new developments happening in the field of law librarianship, such as AI and the adoption of new digital technologies, that it's really a very exciting field to be in.
What's a common myth that you run into about your job or field of expertise?
Well, I've come across quite a few so far, but the most amusing one about my own work is that many people think that I don't sleep because I've got so much work out there. But actually, this is definitely not true. I love my sleep. But a practice that I'll share that kind of makes it look this way is that I have made a habit to try to absolutely repurpose everything that I have taken the time to learn as many times as I can so that the time was well spent and I end up with as much content or work output as I can from it. So, for example, throughout my career, when I've learned something new at a job or through my research or writing, or even in my personal life, I think about all of the ways that I can make use of that knowledge so that I can use it more than once. A case in point is one of my more recent hobbies has been going to escape rooms. I was going to a lot of them, and then I became intrigued by how they were designed. And as I got more into them, I ended up developing an Alexander Hamilton themed escape room for the New York Law Institute, which was quite popular. And then I also wrote a book on how libraries could design their own escape rooms for outreach and information literacy. I then wrote a library technology report white paper on how to create digital versions of these. And then I developed a webinar on the process, which I have given to various library associations. And more recently, I've done the same thing with the knowledge that I've gained developing a sustainable lifestyle with my book and talks on sustainable library programming. And I just cannot recommend this practice enough, as it's resulted in a lot of content for me, and it makes learning new things a more robust experience. So if you've just learned how to use Canva for your job, for example, maybe you can develop a tutorial and teach others, or write an article about how you designed a set of collectible bookmarks for your library using it.
Okay. So Ellyssa, when you had set up the homestead, the farmstead, you had people reach out to you and say, maybe blog about this or maybe write about this. And I was looking in my notes because I thought you had mentioned that you were starting to do that. Is that right?
I just published a book in November, 25 ready-to-use sustainable living library programs for libraries. So, yeah, and I've been giving a sustainability webinar pretty much regularly since last summer for different library associations as well. So that was one of the multi-purposing things. I took what I learned out here, and then I got some other sustainability experts and librarians to come up with different projects that you can do in libraries.
You said, yeah, I've done the same thing with the knowledge I've gained developing a sustainable lifestyle with my book and talks on sustainable library programming.
Yeah, the book is more geared toward public library programming. And so, for example, one of the contributors has set up a beehive on top of his library with webcams, so that they now have a beekeeping program at the library and people can look at it, everywhere. And so he wrote about how you would set one of these up for your own library. And so a couple of my programs that I wrote about were like how to start a homestead and hobby farm, how to have that type of programming at your library, and how to do straw bale gardening and how you can teach your patrons. And then other contributors wrote about stuff like how to do mason jar hydroponics and how to grow your own mushrooms and how to do herbal medicine and stuff like that. It's so great to do things that aren't, right in front of the computer, and to gardening and all of these types of projects. And it really helps with mindfulness and then coming up with ideas. I found that I've been so creative since I've been out here because of all of that time spent doing that. And if you're interested in this, there's a hashtag called Slow Living, and it's a response to the hustle culture. It came about during COVID. I'm really liking that right now.
That's something that could apply almost everywhere. What is one of the most important lessons that you've learned over the course of your career?
Well, as a technologist, the most important lesson that I've learned and I have to keep astride of is that unplugging is absolutely vital to mental health, creativity, and productivity. As someone who works with technology all day long, it is so important to work in breaks during the workday, on the weekends, and definitely for vacations. Otherwise, if you're constantly on all the time and available 24/7 and thinking and brainstorming nonstop, it's very easy to get burnt out. I need the downtime in order to let my mind wander and come up with new ideas, which just won't percolate if my brain is constantly buzzing. Now, not everyone can do this, but I work remotely. So I have my laptop and desk set up right in front of a window that lets me look out onto a lush green meadow and see my goats and chickens wandering around. And I take breaks in both the morning and the afternoon to wander out to my gardens or my animals and enjoy the outdoor air. And I try to discipline myself to break for lunch and not eat in front of my computer. I usually do this by cooking my own food, which gets me away from the computer for a little bit. And on the weekends and during vacations, I do my best to not open my work email, even on my phone. Although I'm not always successful at doing this, I know that unplugging from work and even from my phone sometimes is the best that I can do to have mindfulness and to replenish my creativity.
Thank you. When they asked me to do this podcast or work on this podcast as part of the Legal Information Services team, you were one of the first names I added to the list. And as a topic, I put creativity. That was sort of my first thought about what you might talk about or what you might share things about. So now let me ask, what do you consider the most important personality trait or personality strength that someone would need to be successful in your job?
I think that for my job, the most important personality trait is the ability to achieve a healthy work-life balance. And I discussed this a bit in the last question, but I think it bears discussing. I somehow do have the ability to work from home and strike a balance between managing my deliverables and not being chained to my desk 24/7. But that took me a long time to work out. Most people worry that they would not be disciplined enough to get their work done if they worked remotely, but I've found the opposite to be the case. The challenge for me has always been knowing when to put it down, knowing when I've achieved enough for the day and can switch gears to also enjoy life. And I do this by scheduling my time during the days using a Google Calendar, which is usually overfull. But I also make to-do lists on paper by my laptop of what I want to achieve for the next day. And then I have to be willing to walk away from an incomplete list every now and again.
Yeah, I agree. It's funny you say that. I still use a paper calendar. You know, sometimes at the end of the day, something just gets moved to the next day or the next week or the next month.
Exactly.
Doesn't have to be done that day. What do you wish that you had known when you began your career starting out?
So I worried a lot at the beginning of my career that the field was so competitive and that I would find my place in it. And I wish I knew at that time that there were just so many opportunities in the world of librarianship and so many that I hadn't even thought of yet that I needn't have stressed about it. It's one of the things that I love most about this career. You can really make of it whatever you'd like. If you enjoy teaching, there are plenty of opportunities to give workshops at library association events and conferences, at local consortia, and even in LIS programs. If you like to write or edit, there are countless publications and publishers that are looking for new authors. And if you want to move out into the middle of nowhere to start a family homestead and spend time riding a tractor, you can still work remotely in the library field.
That affirms something that I've been talking about with several of our guest speakers about how there's so much variety in being a librarian and so many choices. And you've just said the same thing. You know, we can really make of it whatever we want to. And the fact that there's so many choices. Who knew? Lots of people never knew that there were such things as law librarians and sort of stumbled into this path. And that would be something to explore, you know, for LAGNY to explore and for other groups to explore. How do we get people to learn about law? How do we spread the word about being a law librarian? How do we make that exciting? So thank you for those thoughts. What is one piece of advice you would give to someone just starting out as a librarian?
Well, as I mentioned, there are plenty of opportunities to get your name out there and to advance in the field if you just keep your eyes open for them. They may not pay great or anything at the beginning, but trust me, your efforts will not be wasted in the end. My advice would be to just jump in and take some of these opportunities, even if they're not on the exact path for your career that you have envisioned. You never know who you'll meet as a result, what you'll learn and discover that you might love that you hadn't previously considered, or what new path it might forge for you.
But can you tell us a little bit about library tools that you've created in any of your roles that are used by librarians or patrons or students?
Sure. Well, I've created several instructional LibGuides on how to use our electronic resources, such as our ebooks for our NILE members, as well as designed many instructional videos and webinars on technology topics, ranging from cybersecurity to how to use specific computer applications such as PowerPoint, Snagit, email management through Outlook, and more. In my role at NILE, I handle all of the staff technology training. And we've also recently begun a new NILE skills series, which offers our members a chance to take webinars that I've designed on how to use applications that they can use in their own work, such as Zoom and Canva, as well as one on digital archiving.
Those are really something, the ones that I had written down, the LibGuides, certainly you introduced our librarian team to those. And now there's a whole collection of those on the NILE website, nile.org. But also you created a number of teaching tools, often in PowerPoint format. The ones I remember were teaching about Acrobat, the fine points of Acrobat, Zoom, Snagit, like you said, Excel. But the NILE skill series, these are how to use. Are they taped? Did you do them as videos? Did you do them as audio files or PowerPoints?
So they are live webinars that we're giving. And then I also have recorded them for those who couldn't make it to the live webinar. And they can all be found on our NILE website, as you said, Karen, nile.org. They can be found in the webcasts and tutorials section of our website.
Excellent. Thank you. There was always something new coming from Ellyssa. It was just remarkable. And, the rest of us were doing our jobs and she would do her job. And then she'd come up and say, I think that you guys could know more about this or know more about that or the fine points of Excel. And she'd write something new. It was really quite astonishing and remarkable and valuable. So thank you for that. I really benefited from that. Can you talk about one lesson or several lessons that your work has taught you that you think everyone should learn at some point in your life? You've got younger relatives, and I imagine that you model behavior for them and try to share as much important information with them as you're able.
Sure. One important lesson that took me a while to learn is that no one can know everything about their job, about the field in general, and that's okay. Saying you don't know and that you'll look into it is an acceptable response. That's what we do as librarians. We find information. With that being said, don't waste time second guessing yourself. You don't have to be perfect. Your work doesn't have to be perfect. Your work will always be reflective of where you are in your career and in your learning process, and that's just fine. It's so much better to produce something that's perfectly imperfect and to share that knowledge with others than to get caught up in what I call analysis paralysis and have nothing to show for it at the end of the day.
And sort of related to that, what are some of the most important learnings that you would want to share with fellow law librarians?
Well, one valuable lesson that I've learned throughout my career is that you can learn as much by meeting people and talking with them as you can from practical work experience. Library conferences and events are an invaluable opportunity to meet fellow librarians and hear about what they're doing in their own libraries, what new trends they're following, news about vendors and new technologies, and what might be on the horizon for your own library. The panels are great, but I have always found that just as much can be gleaned from what happens in the hallways, the casual conversations among librarians, as well as in the sessions.
It's true. Could you talk a little bit about how you ended up beginning a homestead in South Carolina? I mean, not too long, I think it was a year or so after I got to Niley, you began to work remotely several years before the rest of us did. But you were in a city, and then several years later, you decided to buy property out in the country. Could you talk a little bit about that? I mean, I know that you guys built a barn and you added animals and you added all different kinds of farming. Would you share a little about that?
Yeah. So during COVID, while everything was happening with the pandemic and the supply chain shortages with the grocery stores and the civil unrest and the political uncertainty that was happening in the world, I decided that I wanted to be somewhere where I could be more self-reliant, live a more self-sustaining lifestyle where I could grow some of my own food. And it was important for me to do that around family as well. And so, yes, I purchased 14 acres way out in the country, and I invited my family to follow me on this adventure. And so far, my sister has placed a house out here. My parents have placed a house out here, and my parents' friends from their childhood have also done so. And we are sharing experiences and knowledge, and we're just absolutely loving it out here. We've got 9 chickens now, 3 goats, 2 dogs, a bunch of cats, and a Holland lot bunny.
And then you started farming almost right away. Is it called container farming? There was a particular thing you were doing a couple years ago. Hay bales.
Straw bales. Yeah. Wheat straw bale gardening. Yes. And I still do that. I do love straw bale gardening. We also have a tractor now, and we are doing a kind of community garden with everybody here on the homestead pitching in and planting their own stuff in a very big garden this year. And we've got some containers as well. And we're looking forward to perhaps a greenhouse on the horizon.
Wow, that is new. I knew that your sister built there too, and her kids. And I knew that your folks had come, but I didn't know that friends of your parents had also joined you. I think of you guys as a commune out there.
Yeah, pretty much.
Do you think that will expand? Do you see bringing other friends?
I think that we're pretty full for now. I think we've got enough for the time being, but yeah, we all love being out here, and it's been a great experience. It's been a little over 2 years now, and so far it's going really great.
Good. And I, as I said earlier, I know that you raised a barn, and now I'm trying to remember the long, slender red building. Is that where your office is too?
Yes. So I have an outdoor office barn that I work in, and I also have that as my maker space as well. So I've got that, and then 2 large chicken coops, because my most recent chickens are called Brahmas, and they grow to be 10 to 12 pounds each. Oh, so they're going to get quite tall as well. They are known as the gentle giants of the chicken world. So they are very amusing, as the other Easter egger chickens that you mentioned are as well. So
do you still have the Easter egg chickens?
Yes, we've got them. They lay their pastel colored eggs, and they sing their egg song every time they lay an egg. So it's quite musical out here.
I don't think that I knew that. Wow. Is it different from what the other chickens sing or cluck?
I haven't heard the larger chickens singing yet. I'm not sure if it's going to be more of a baritone sound or what it's going to be, but it'll be interesting.
That is very cool. Like you said, they're the gentle giants, so we sort of think of them as bass or baritone, maybe not.
Yes.
I know a little about the kind of things that you've done, and I know that we listed them early in our talk, but I just want to make sure that that's clear to people because you're an IT person. And one of your T-shirts, actually, if I remember it right, it says, "I am the IT guy." You were an IT person, at least in my memory, you were an IT person, and then you came to libraries. And so you brought to being a librarian, and particularly a law librarian, you brought all this other interesting stuff, all these different ways of thinking and different ways of categorizing information and understanding linkages and understanding how things are organized. Would you consider that accurate?
Yeah, thank you.
No, you're welcome. It was just, that's been one of my favorite learnings of this whole podcast experience. Everybody that's a law librarian so far that I've talked to dropped into it from somewhere else, not purely by chance, but, through serendipity or through a series of connections. And I knew yours. I was always like, wow, you started to blog right away and you were in web consulting. But then you thought, okay, I need to understand more about libraries. And so you got, another master's. So my question is, and if you're comfortable with this, how do you think of yourself? I mean, you've got this whole list. You're a professor and you're an author and you're a teacher and you're an editor and you're an IT person and you're a law librarian and you're an accomplished speaker and international speaker. When you meet somebody and they say, "So, Ellyssa, what do you do?" What do you say?
I actually say I'm a librarian. And it really starts the conversation because I think that a lot of people are intrigued by that. And because it can mean so many different things in this day and age. And yeah, it's a real conversation starter.
And then you're able to share with them more of the stuff that you've done and that you do. Because you're so multidimensional. One of our other speakers, he was a stockbroker before he came to being a librarian, and he wasn't crazy about it. And so he went to see a headhunter and said, "What do you have?" And the guy said, "Well, I've got a librarian job in a law firm." And he said, "Librarian? Law firm?" Because to him, librarians were the people that kept everybody quiet in the space. But it's so much different. So anything else that you would like to share on any topic?
Just to echo my sentiments from earlier, I love being a librarian. I feel like it's such a versatile and adaptable career. And it's really allowed me to pursue so many different creative and professional avenues, such as writing and teaching, that I might not have gotten to do otherwise.
And then we like to ask this: what are you reading these days? And separate to that, what would you recommend that people read in personal or professional, any field? So maybe that's easiest. What are you reading these days?
Well, actually, we have started a little book club out here on the homestead, and we're reading Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. I absolutely love that period.
And with the book club, do you guys take turns leading it? The person that recommends the book leads it? How do you guys do that?
We take turns, and what we've done is we found a great article on how to read the book. We're in the middle of it right now, but how to read the book and also watch the 1990s BBC miniseries at the same time so that we're not giving away spoilers, but after we have read the first 10 or so chapters, we watched the first installment of the miniseries, which was really great.
That's brilliant. That is excellent. I'm in a couple of book groups. Well, one of them you founded, the graphic novel book group, that's now a Lagny book group, Lagny/Niley book group on graphic novels. Occasionally there'll be a movie out about the book that we've read, and so we try to watch the movie after we've read the book. But I like the idea of aligning it with the miniseries. So clearly you would recommend anything by Jane Austen.
Definitely.
Anything else that you would recommend?
That's really all that's on my radar right now.
Do you like the Bronte sisters as well?
I do, but I haven't had a chance to read much by them.
No, me neither. I read Jane Eyre, as a
Yeah.
person and read that, every couple of years or so. Well, Ellyssa, thank you. This has been terrific. Is there anything that you want to talk about or anything you want to say that maybe didn't fit into a question?
I don't think so. I think that you actually came up with a couple of extra questions, which were great, that I hadn't thought of. So I appreciate that. I love that you asked more about the homestead, and so I got to talk about that. So thank you.
Ellyssa, it's been a delight to spend time in emails with you and almost an hour today. I really thank you for joining us and sharing.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to The Practicing Law Librarian, part of PLI's Ever Current podcast. Be sure to subscribe and listen to our latest episodes wherever you listen to podcasts. And to learn more about the Practicing Law Institute, please visit pli.edu. To learn more about PLI Plus, which provides electronic access to the full collection of PLI Press publications, and schedule a demo with a member of our team, please visit pli.edu/plus. Please note that the views and opinions expressed during this podcast represent those of the individuals being interviewed and not necessarily those of PLI.